All right, folks, welcome to Nino's Corner.tv. I am joined again with SGAnon. It's always a pleasure to have SGAnon on. Lots of things developing, folks. I had Wano Saban on earlier talking about the situation in America, the train derailments. Now, uh, it's breaking news. It seems like every couple hours where there's another derailment, a chemical spill, a warehouse on fire. There's no doubt to me, SG, and I'm sure we just talked about this before I started recording. There's no doubt to me that we are now under attack, correct?
Well, absolutely. And thank you for having me back, Nino.
Absolutely.
We've we've entered the phase now in this war of true desperation. We've entered the phase where they have to deploy and expose themselves and their networks of control um, in ways that have never been exposed before. You know, look at these train derailments and then think about what's going to occur with the companies that supposedly own these railroads. Who owns those companies? Well, if we look at it, most of them go all of the way back to BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street, with BlackRock having a very significant portfolio of railways in their asset management. These are overt attacks, acts of war. These are assaults on the civilian sector by an unlawful government. We are forcing the covert war that has been going on between the deep state and the White Hat Alliance. We're forcing it into the public space, but we're doing so in a way, we're forcing them to do so in a way that outs the overt war in a fashion that the public narrative and the public consciousness knows who the enemy is. Because this is a disinformation war and an irregular style of war, we sort of have to allow the other side to defeat themselves. As we go through and we eradicate the parts of this cabal all through the world that are sort of underground black sites, black markets, things like that, things that the public doesn't really know about much anyway, things get more and more raucous and crazy here on the surface. That's really what we're dealing with here. On top of that, these railroad companies will never survive the financial outfall of this. They
No.
will never be able to survive what happens to them in a court system in the new country that is coming. And we have a new country coming, right? So in that system, we're still going to have a judiciary. We're still going to have a means of law and order and justice, except it's going to be appropriate and pointed towards we, the people, and protecting the Constitution, the security and the safety of the citizens of the United States, and providing that due process for all parties. When that system is rolled out, and I think we're really already seeing it rolled out because we've had Trump judges that have been making very powerful decisions now for several years. These entities and these organizations will never survive the outfall of what's occurring. We've literally forced them into a desperation set of plays, if you will, that they can't get out of.
Do you also believe that these events are happening now? And I tell my audience this. These are happening now because of it's desperation because of the House hearings. The MAGA controls the House now, and these hearings are intensifying. These investigations are escalating, and it's looking real bad for the deep state. It's like, it's almost like controlling the House is almost more important than controlling the presidency. Am I right in saying that? Like right now, the hammer's coming down.
Well, for the first time in many decades, we the people of the United States have control of the people's house. Now, really, it's all under the control of a military operation, right? And we have to remember that in the background. But the military operation is akin to putting a computer into safe mode so that you can go in and be hands on with parts of that software and parts of that structure that you would not normally be able to access and be so directly controlling. And so that's what we have going on in the background. We, the people, are being given back slowly but surely the levers of power and control. That is absolutely petrifying for this deep state cabal. They cannot allow that to happen. We're too awake. If it happened 6 years ago, they could get us back under control. They would still have enough leverage and influence, even with Donald Trump in office, as we saw, to sort of keep things going the way that they were going. But now we're awake. Now we know what to do. We know who the problems are. We know their names. We know who their bank accounts are connected to. We know where those accounts are going to lead. We've been digging up anything and everything about our shared history. or excuse me, our shared hidden history, things that have been wiped out from the historical record, important perspectives that we all have to fully understand how the levers of power and control work both within our governments and around the world. We know all of that now, and now we're leveraging that against them. They couldn't be in a bigger panic mode. They have literally been forced into an untenable situation. If they don't move, they're screwed. If they do move, they're screwed. There's nothing they can do.
I've talked many times with Juan about this, and I said, the House now be controlled by MAGA shows me it's almost like they're on they're in a chessboard where any move they make, they're stuck. It's like they're in quicksand, and then now all they can do is do desperation, panic, Hail Marys, trying to, they want to just they kind of just have to knock over the chessboard now, and it's like they're in a state of panic. And you even have Trump coming out saying that just recently Trump wants to bring back public executions and air them on TV. That's a calm to me. Do you agree with me? That's a total calm. That former President Donald Trump has been in discussions with the close associates regarding his 2024 presidential campaign, but this time with new ideas. Among the topics discussed are plans to reintroduce the death penalty with a bevy of execution methods enacted by the federal government, and thus time potentially televising these executions. To me, that's a calm, and that's the direct hit to the deep state. That's telling them it's coming.
Without doubt. The fact that those pieces were published in mainstream far left controlled articles, they have no reason to publish that, Nino. They would only publish something like that if they desperately had to, if they desperately knew that something was coming and they were trying. This is akin to the New York Times and the article that they published regarding tribunals. It's a flare. Yeah. It's a heads up. This is real. This is planned. This is coming. It's not simply a conspiracy theory. And it is coming. We're moving into a phase now in this process where they're going to get more and more reckless because it's the only way that they can keep us distracted. But unfortunately, that is no longer an effective move for them because we have a singularity of focus on what the problem is. It doesn't matter what they do. They're still going to try it, but it does not matter what they do. And when all is said and done, and we arrive at the end of this breakdown and restructuring process, the military justice will be something that mankind will never forget.
Alex Jones came out and said the paradigms are clashing, that, you're going to have people that go with the Great Awakening and they go into that shift of consciousness. And then people, and I've said this many times on my shows too, then there's going to be the other shift where people go deeper into sleep and fall victim to this globalist agenda. And we're going to kind of coexist. These two timelines are going to coexist together for I don't know how long. I mean, I've had many guests say that it's going to last till they give a certain year and this and that, but who knows how long. I just know that they're going to be coexisting. And I think that liberals and normies are going to go by the way of natural selection. I mean, I think it's at this point, if they're not awake at this point, then kiss their asses goodbye, because right now with what we're seeing and everything that's happening with the derailments and the attacks on America, if this doesn't wake you up, it's game over for you, man. And it's best just to hug these people, give them your love, and wish them the best.
I always love your perspectives and your point of view, Nino, because that is going to be true, unfortunately, for a percentage of the population. Even Q tells us that. Q tells us that there are going to be those people. Probably academics, really. The smarter that people believe that they are, the more pride that they sort of hold within that. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it becomes difficult to break that programming with differing sets of beliefs. There are those percentages that we will have to hug and say, we're along for the ride. We'll meet you when it's over. I didn't think prior to these derailments that a significant portion of the 18 to 27 crowd was ever going to come around by this time. We're several years into this. We've witnessed the economy, the country torn apart, the world being torn apart, back to war, all of the sort of, ways of before, right? And yet they still weren't awake. This disaster has happened. And individuals, I think I put up on True Social, an individual that I work with, a young man, basically said that he can't believe what's going on. And this is the worst environmental disaster in U.S. history. I shared a video with a TikToker who couldn't be more than maybe 23, 25 at most. Very young lady, very impassionate, very upset. and was telling people that the government is covering this up. People are waking up, especially in that demographic. A lot of these young climate activists who really believe in that idea of preserving and protecting the environment, maybe with the wrong lens, but they believe in the cause. They're realizing that the same people that have been telling them that climate is such a problem also don't care about this. That's a very big point of realization for them. And this disaster compelled a significant percentage of that demographic over the edge.
Multiple agencies are looking into calls of the loud explosion over Mission, Texas. Something happened in Mission, Texas. Currently, multiple agencies are reporting a loud bang and shaking near Mission, Texas. As we know what happened in Ohio, Tennessee, California, and Texas. The derailments, now another derailment in Detroit, Michigan, at least one car carrying hazardous materials. This is so obvious. Massive 5-acre fire has broken out in a warehouse storing plastic pots in Kissimmee, Florida. Hazmat teams are monitoring air quality. This is so obvious. Mass shooting in El Paso, Texas at Silva Vista Mall. I think cells are being activated. I really do believe that right now it's all systems go, create chaos, create havoc, steal the news cycle. Here we go.
Without doubt. And part of the process that we've all had to live through is to expose these networks. And they're so deeply entrenched that in many cases, the networks cannot be exposed unless they're allowed, or either allowed to or forced into, whichever way you want to look at it, to go through with some of these nefarious actions and intentionalities. We simply don't know all of the working levers involved. We can have all of the mass surveillance and all of the capability of military intelligence to bear, and we can identify these individuals, but military intelligence is currently keeping up with more than 1 billion people all around the world. It is extremely difficult to hone in and handle every one of those in a special operations format and still keep that operation covert. On top of that, it would take years. Do any of us really want to live through a silent military operation for 10 or 15 years? I don't think so.
No.
So as we go through this process, the expedited rate of exposure here that's happening because these deep sleepers are being wakened for their agendas, if you will, the agenda being, of course, to survive and attempt to throw the world back into the alignment for the NWO plan. They're being identified not only by the alliance at a breakneck pace, but they're being shown to the public also. So we're all sort of learning who the enemy is continually. We're learning who the enemy is in our corporations. Think of all the railway union workers that are still alive, maybe been working for the railroads over the last half century, and what they're thinking right now about their companies, the individuals that are in charge of those companies, how that infiltration happened. All of the chemical workers around the USA, good patriots who know this is a very serious event. No one's talking about it. The media is trying to act like it's just fine. We know it's not fine. We can see it's not fine. It looks like a nuclear bomb went off over this town. So all of this is sort of bringing to awareness in a very rapid fashion to that central mass population group that we want so badly to get into the fully awakened fold. It's really breaking the programming of things are just bad in the world, but they'll be good again. It's showing them, wait a minute, things are bad, but the government is actively making them worse, and that's causing them to question.
What's your thoughts on these Chinese balloons that were just, hovering over the United States? We shot one down. Now, all of a sudden, we have UFOs flying all over the country, all over Canada. They're even scrambling jets in China. My thoughts on that, all this comes after the Chinese balloon. I think what's happening is they're starting just to throw everything with the baby out with the bathwater. They're throwing everything at us now. Here comes the alien card, just in time with everything else. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, that's absolutely the narrative being pitched by the mainstream and the actors both under our control in government and the actors around the world that are in those positions that are not in our submission. That tells me if they're pointing so universally towards this particular topic, even though they're not outright saying it, it's probably not the case either. I do believe that we have had unidentified objects, and I do believe there has been, some alliance involvement with what I would call other sentient beings that are involved in this fight for Earth, because it is a fight for Earth. It's a fight for control of this world. That being said, it's much more likely that what's going on right now is that they're neither balloons nor UFOs. In my research, I'm finding a lot of evidence for airborne weapon systems, EMP being one of them. These objects were flying at an altitude where a relatively simple disbursement of a few pounds of hyper-focused metal shavings, for example, can cover an extremely large surface area. An EMP attack would be able to leverage that coverage because of the conductivity now created in the atmosphere to sort of wipe out all electrical signal everywhere. Regardless of what they are, I think that the story with them is not over yet. I think that we shifted narratives so quickly that people really aren't keeping in mind the fact that foreign objects over the continental United States of America, likely at the behest of another power, even if they were manufactured here, and I believe that these were by DARPA.
Yeah, me too.
You know, those objects being over the continental United States, we've not heard the last of that story.
I agree with you, and I'm gonna, also what we need to look at too. I think they're going after our complete and total infrastructure. They're taking down our complete infrastructure. Tucker Carlson was on Fox News talking about air travel, that now it's in jeopardy. That they're hiring kids right out of high school. They've lowered the bar. What I think is happening, SG, is they're warning the public not to fly anymore. They're telling you before they do it. I think we're going to start seeing planes have problems, planes maybe going down. They always have to tell you before they do it. What's your thoughts on that?
My thoughts on that are that if you can avoid aircraft at all costs during this phase in this war, I think that you should. The cabal has used aircraft several times over the last 20 years, multiple times, more than 30 instances that I could find, where aircraft were used to accomplish a specific agenda rather than getting people to safety. And normally the collateral damage is the lives that are on the plane. We're already seeing this narrative being prepped in other ways with these vehicles that are now driving into aircraft on tarmac. That happened recently. I believe it was at LAX. This is the playbook is known, right? We need to, I think, reflect over our last maybe 20 years of experiences and look at what it's taught us about how these people work and operate. They sabotage things that maximize loss of life. They use those instances to leverage a particular narrative or to allow for an extraordinary situation where they can gain more control. I think that we see something like a Battle of the Bulge situation with our infrastructure and mass transportation. I think it could include aircraft and probably will. I think it's probably also going to include ground transportation that's other than the railways. I'm thinking trucking or busing, things of that nature. Regardless, wherever you're at, if you're unable to avoid some of these things, be extremely astute, be very discerning, pay close attention to your intuition. Your intuition will guide you in the moment. Your intuition will point you away from situations that will result in consequences you don't want, but you have to listen to it and abide by it. As we go through these phases, the end of this war, and we are into the end phases of this war, these people will do anything and everything within their power. The FAA still has control of the medical guidelines, for pilots, for example. They have removed heart clearance as a part of that requirement for pilots to fly. So we're seeing aircraft incidents going on silently, and I'm seeing different reports coming into my email at different points along the way over these last 4 weeks, where aircraft have been diverted and had to land because an event happened, a health event happened with someone on the flight deck. Oh, wow. It's really important to use your discernment right now. This is a chaotic part of this war. This is Bunker Hill, and mission forward until these people are done.
I was getting on a United flight to fly out for a business meeting, and sitting on the flight, I'm like, this is taking too long. An hour goes by, and then U.S. Marshals get on with police officers telling everybody to get off the flight and recheck their bags, go through TSA. I just said, that's it. I'm off. I'm not getting back on this flight. And I was just listening to my intuition. And it was a Continental flight or a United flight. And then on my way to Arizona driving to go visit my sister, that I run into this chemical spill from a truck, and I'm 15 miles away, divert, get off, take a side road, and it got to my destination. But you have to listen to that intuitive voice. You have to listen to that, that God voice in which it's just a whisper. And too many people ignore it, right, SG?
Absolutely. And this is really how, this part of the discussion is really how the cabal has done to humanity what they've done. They never taught us any of this. We have direct access to a cosmic level guidance. We have direct access to the source of all creation, a source that exists in love to glorify itself and play with us in our lifetimes. That power is very real. It does not come as a voice. It doesn't, it's not like you're listening for something in an audible fashion. It's typically very brief feelings of momentum or complete peace, or very sudden feelings of deep-seated, I wouldn't call it fear. I would call it hesitation.
Right. Turn left instead of right. Turn right instead of left. That type of thing.
Exactly. And learning how to tune back into this is really what we're doing as humanity. They've done such a number on us for hundreds and hundreds of years with the control of information. They've weaponized our food sources, our water supplies, our air, all against us. For what purpose? Well, it was to shut down our spiritual apparatus. It was to try and pinch off as much as possible our direct connection to God. So coming back to that, the way that we hear it is we make a focused, conscious effort, even with all of the crud that's in our systems, all of the crud that's in our water, all of the chaos in our life. We make a focused effort to sit still for just a couple of minutes and allow that spirit to float us some. Sometimes you get something, sometimes you don't. But the more you do that, the more that you start to realize what it feels like when you're there and what it feels like when you're outside of it. When you can realize, you make that realization for yourself personally, how it feels to you individually, to be within that sort of blended spirit with that spirit of God, or to be unblended with that, you're unstoppable. At that point, you can make a focused, concerted effort in every minute of every day to find a specific feeling. And when the human being chooses to pursue consciously how it feels, rather than allowing the external events to dictate to us how we should feel, that is total power. And that's what this cabal is afraid of.
What's your thoughts on the southern, well, I'm going to give you what I believe, the southern border being completely open. I think they're bringing in, I believe they're bringing in terrorists to be ignited, to be triggered, to be activated, to cause havoc, cause chaos in America right now. In fact, Biden's flying them in by the thousands, hundreds and thousands, I think, a month. I think they're coming. A lot of them are coming here for a certain, with an itinerary and a certain job to be done. What's your thoughts on that?
My thoughts on that are twofold. Based on some of the research that I've been doing, first off, I agree with that. I agree with everything that you just said. That is the intentionality from the Black Hats. That's their goal. It's their plan. It's always been their plan. And they've been allowed certain levels of control to make that plan happen. Now, people say, well, why in the world would that happen? I can't tell you. What I can tell you is that if I have 100,000 rats and I have 3 rats to a cage, and I have 33,000 separate cages all around the earth that I have to raid in order to get these rats, would it not make more sense for me to put all of these rats in one giant cage? And I think that's exactly what we're dealing with. I think that a lot is being asked of the American people. We are being essentially required, if you will, whether we want to be or not, to shoulder the depravity and corruption in the world so that we can get a full identification of all of it everywhere, so that we can run operations all throughout the world to identify the control matrices that govern these apparatuses, that control these networks. Where again, I ask this question a lot: who pays for the cell phones? Who pays for the shoes? Who provides these individuals? Who's making those deliveries? What companies are fulfilling these orders? All of this is a part of identifying the cabal and all of the cabal's fingers in all